Friends, welcome to the Wild at Heart podcast. It is the week of May 15th. Before we take a step further, let's pause, release everything, find God, or at least make ourselves available to God in this moment. Jesus, I give everyone and everything to you. Everyone, everything to you. Restore our union today. Restore our union. Meet us as a community in this podcast. Meet me as an individual in this podcast. Restore our intimacy, God. In Jesus' name. Amen. Well, if you were not with us last week, you might want to go back and catch that episode, because this is part 2 of a conversation with my son, Sam Eldridge, on, just a whole variety of things about the capacity to be present to others in suffering, and what gets in the way of that. Why do we avoid it? Why do we avoid it even in our own lives? Being present to ourselves, being able to access it, and So Sam is in his third and final year of grad school as a therapist, seeing clients now. And this was born out of that. We were just riffing on, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? And pretty quickly we got to the gift that presence can be in people's suffering, in death itself. And just the fear and the awkwardness that most of us feel around that, and therefore the withdrawal,
right? And
the checking out and the choosing to duck and run if at all possible.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back on, Dad. The domino trail for me began even in like the shallower end of the pool, where I would sit with a friend who'd had an argument with his parent, or his wife, or as a dad. And I would feel this inadequacy in me to have the answer. Like, wow, okay, so you've had like a hard week, you've had a hard call, you've had a hard whatever. And it all in that kind of shallower end of, that's super normal. That stuff happens all the time. That kind of, man, I just got the call personally last week from the car dealer, and I owed $2,000 in car repairs. And it was this like,
Yes.
And why is it that then nobody has any words for that moment? In that moment we go, well, sucks to be you. Which is, maybe we go to humor, or maybe we kind of like try and go to sympathy, but I'm like, wow, I'm in the shallow end of the pool with like mild disappointments. How deep does this thing go? And it sure seems to continue into our suffering, other suffering, the more deep end of the pool type things like trauma, abuse, and death. And it was in that space that I began to kind of work my way back out. And it was, like I mentioned last time, some of the writings of Irvin Yalom, who has this deep conviction of, don't abandon other people to face things alone. You don't have to have the answer. Just be willing to face it together. And I just remember being brought to tears reading about that and kind of sitting with that going, right, I want that in the deep end and in the shallow end. And why are we so poorly practiced at the whole spectrum of it?
I was going to start riffing on why, but why? Why do you think we are?
Variety of reasons. At this point in my life, I kind of see people as, I know in the daily prayer, you break down multiple aspects of the self, spirit, soul, mind, heart, body, will. That gets a little complicated for most people. So I do kind of just look at people as, you are mind and body and spirit. And what are the implications? So why did I go there when you asked me that question? Because I go, oh, I know the reasons on why for the body, Like we fear pain, we fear discomfort. Our bodies are hardwired to escape from suffering, fire, hunger, basic
Yes.
survival instincts. So I'm like, right. So
Yes.
that's definitely at play. But what about the pieces of us that are mind and spirit? And in the Old Testament literature, there's not a huge differentiation, my understanding, between mind and heart. That kind of gets like
Right.
interchangeable. So
Yeah.
why do our hearts have such a hard time with suffering? Like I think it feels overwhelming. I think we weren't, and part of me goes, I don't know that we were designed for it, but I don't know if I believe that, to be quite honest. Like I think there would have been, maybe if not suffering, certainly challenge. It was bitterness and futility that was entered into after the fall, but there was still work, there was still toil, there was still mastery, there was still wilderness. So something in me goes, I think personally that we pull away from it because we're unpracticed at it, because it feels too big for us to handle. And some part of our design recoils. Like it just feels wrong. It feels wrong to have this period at the end of somebody's sentence.
Yes. Yeah.
And by that, I mean like a death still feels really jarring.
Yes.
It feels confusing.
I do think we are equipped and ill-equipped. Equipped in the sense of the human body has tears.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that fascinating? And I don't think that was just to cleanse our eyes from, pollen and debris. I think the capacity is there to grieve, the capacity to empathize, the capacity is there. What we were riffing on last week is it seems like to the degree that we are unwilling or unable to go there for ourselves, we find ourselves in those moments of frozen, awkward silence, don't know what to say with others. Right? And you go into the Psalms and you find this incredibly rich body of emotional expression.
Yeah.
Right?
I love the Psalms because it makes me feel normal. I love you. You're amazing. You saved me. You've abandoned me. I'm alone in my despair. Like it just is very.
I believe, I don't believe. I believe, I don't believe.
It's very helpful. It feels like, oh, that's a baseline that I think I could hit.
Yes. Right. I think that we fear if we go into it that we won't come out. We fear that it's a bottomless pit.
Mm-hmm.
We fear that our own personal suffering first before we go into others. It just feels like the soul that has spent some time with their own well-being, with their own condition, with like tuning into emotions, tuning into how I'm doing, and walking into suffering as opposed to running from it as quickly as we can. That soul is that's a person I want to be with.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah. And I mean, years ago, I think I wrote in Wild at Heart, I don't trust a man who has not suffered. Now, let me pause on that and say there is a ton about our culture, though, that causes us to run. People don't die in our presence anymore.
Right.
People hardly suffer in our presence anymore. Like we whisk that away and try and make everything shiny and comfortable and good.
Oh, and then flip the other switch and go, all our media is, would you like to see 17 images of the latest train accident that just happened in India like 5 minutes ago? Oh, hey, there was a bomb that just went off another part of the world.
Totally.
Oh, okay. You know what? You want to relax? Okay. Why don't you turn on the latest post-apocalyptic gory show that involves all sorts of tragedy and harm? And you're like, so that's our news and our entertainment. But the actual human beings that you have contact with in your life, you have sterility from between your suffering and theirs. That's weird.
Yeah. Something that has been actually a very, very rich part of my life in the last couple of years, I've found two things going on. I have found that the enemy is trying to use my suffering to separate me from God and from others. And the increasing awareness of, oh, my suffering is a place of vulnerability where he's trying to get in with feelings of abandonment and betrayal and, isolation. And the remedy applies to this podcast series, because the remedy for me has been walk straight into the middle of it.
Mm.
Walk straight into the middle of my suffering and love God there. Because as I do, then I access the other side of what the Psalms are, right? That you are with me. You are a very present help in time of need. You meet me in my suffering. You comfort me. This is a shift for me, because the ability to do that is increasing my ability to do it with others. Like if I can walk into my own suffering, name it, emote, invite someone in, invite God there, right? Then I'm developing a new way.
Yeah, it's really good. I think we said this last time, but that idea that you can't take somebody anywhere you haven't gone yourself, which isn't to say that you have had to walk through divorce or the loss of a child or that particular diagnosis to understand suffering.
Yes.
Like the comparison of suffering is wildly inefficient in what it does. It further isolates you, it diminishes you, and it makes you less likely to reach out to others. So when you begin to compare, the fruit of it is just horrible. Now, if you can go back to what you were just saying, your suffering, if you hold your suffering with the dignity that it is and also the weight that it has and walk into it, well, then you actually can do the same for others' suffering, regardless of how nuanced or different it might be. Like you've gone there, and that's what matters.
Yes, right. Well, okay, so back to Yalom. We're riffing on Irving Yalom because he was a existentialist.
Is he still alive, I think?
Is he?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Is an existentialist, psychologist, doesn't know Christ yet. I actually had a friend who called him.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, had a conversation just to tell him how much he appreciated his work and how it was used in our grad school. Apparently, it's also used in your graduate work. He did explore his faith with him a little bit, but one of Yalom's things is that it is the relationship that heals.
Right.
It is the relationship. It is your presence that heals, not your answers. And so I think helping one another, because I feel it as soon as somebody's in a bad place, I want to fix it. And that's, of course, I mean, that's not only running from it. That's also compassion, love, intervention. But the thing that matters in the moment most is the loving presence that's offered to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think your pull to fixing it is inherently wrong. It's the way that it unfolds, right? You see somebody else's suffering, you want to help them out of it.
Yes.
But I can think of hundreds of scenarios that I've been the firsthand casualty of, where somebody does come in and try and like snap their fingers, get out of it. Like it makes them so uncomfortable. And I'm like, no, you don't, that's actually not what I need. What I need is just for you to be with me.
Yes.
And as we were chatting about before, like that can be incredibly lonely when you don't have somebody to come and be with you, because we're naming right now, we are a culture, we are a people that is unskilled at this.
Yes.
We are not walking around going, oh, you know what? My friend Tiffany just had a really brutal week. I'm just going to go, I'm going to bring her a meal and I'm just going to sit. Like, who does that? Maybe a handful of people. So I think we're kind of destined a little bit to have experienced the longing, the ache for somebody to come and sit with us. And I can't help but think of some of the posture of this is like, right, you need to kind of become that for others so you can help teach them the way of interacting. How many people are talking like this? How many people like to go, suffering is the thing you should enter into? Everybody's like, no, it's not. I run from that. I soothe it. I want to go get some Chick-fil-A or like, give me like the dopamine hit. I need to like now look at my phone and scroll because this has like been a hard podcast.
Yes.
I get it. pay attention to those pieces in you that need to be soothed.
Yes. Yes. Before we got on, our producer, Alan, was reminding me that many people don't have someone to meet them in their suffering. And this is the absolute unique and beautiful offering of the Christian faith that I'm not familiar any other faith offers this, because Buddhism is escape it. It's there is no suffering, right? You quote transcend it, but Christ enters into it.
Right.
The man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, does not forsake, does not leave us. And so even though we might not have skilled people around us or just good friends who have some maturity, we do have God. We do, to meet us in these places. And Paul goes on to say, so that we may comfort others with the comfort that we have received. In fact, I think he precedes that by saying, if the sufferings of Christ overflow into our lives, then the comfort of God does as well. So I think seeking that out, looking for it, praying for it, and in my experience, it comes as I enter the suffering.
Right.
And name it, journal about it, express it. This isn't the first podcast that I've confessed my baseball bat and trash can approach. I think everyone needs it.
You don't actually have like some kind of promo deal with baseball bat manufacturers, do you?
I should, man. Well, it's funny. So there are rage rooms now? Have you heard about this?
No.
I should have patented this.
This is where you get to go in and break everything?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I have seen this.
Yeah. You can go in and just trash an old television set or something because
break all the plates.
Okay, so people need help with their emotions. So now it's a thing you can go do. So last week, as we were talking about, get a spatula, get a running shoe, a sofa cushion, go ham on that, because it is as we enter our suffering, Christ meets us in it. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me. It doesn't say, yea, though I circumvent on a higher ridge.
Once I realize I'm down there, you bring in the helicopter and get me out of it immediately.
The valley. You are there with me. Our God is a very present help in time of need. And so it's as we choose to enter the difficult, that then we are able to enter the difficult with others.
Yeah, Dad, there's two reasons why I have suggested, I don't know if we're going to end up using it, but I think now that I'm talking about it, we probably will, called this series Through the Doorway. And there's two images that are rooted in that for me. One is the doorway in the last battle in the Chronicles of Narnia. The doorway is this portal through which all of mankind and all of creation is given the opportunity to walk through and go into the new creation, or to turn away from and deny Aslan in this moment and go into darkness. And it's this passing through the doorway of death. Like, they are leaving that life behind and they are walking through a literal doorway to come into the new creation. The other one for me is from Hosea 2:15. There I will give her back her vineyards, and I will make the valley of Achor into a door of hope. The valley of Achor was this place where the Israelites had to massacre some of their own people and burn them because there was this battle they were going into that they lost because one of the tribes was unclean, turned away from God, and it had this massive consequence. And so they were forced to stone and burn and bury this. So it's this tomb. The Valley of Achor is a tomb and this monument to our failings, our turning away from God. And here the prophet's going, I'm going to turn the Valley of Achor into a door of hope. I'm going to turn the monument to your suffering, your past, your loss, your grief, into a doorway that you will walk through into hope. And I'm like, okay, I want those two doors, like that. Neither back to I'm using those references now as you're talking about the Valley of Death, because I'm like, guess what? If you're walking through that doorway in the Valley of Achor, like you were in a dark, dark, dark place.
Mm.
It's not like, guess what? You were at the beach in Kauai, and then the doorway appeared, and you got to be raptured through it and just escape all pain and all suffering. The quotes that come to mind for me are things like Jordan Peterson has said, your life isn't vacation at the beach. Your life is the small moments of your wife greeting you when you come home. The quote by Confucius, every man has two lives, and the second one begins when he realizes he has just one. These things of like, come back. It is going to be hard. Yes. But those doorways are there. There is an answer if you're willing to go to those hard places and look for them.
So let's talk specifically about death then.
Yeah.
Because I was in a surprising conversation several months ago with a dear friend, and we were chatting about spiritual formation, life with God, the cultivation of our character. Yeah, just becoming more and more who we were meant to be, becoming wholehearted people. And she surprised me when she said, one of the things I do is I consider my death often. And I'm like, what? What a freaky thing to do. Like,
yeah.
that's a terrible idea.
Fairly antisocial and morbid.
Yeah. I mean,
but
what was shocking about it was, first, I have never, ever heard anyone say that. Not to me, not in a conversation. Hey, I think about my death a lot, other than obviously people with terminal diagnoses. But she's not. She's young, healthy, mother, life as well. And so I pressed into it to ask a little bit more. And she just began to describe for her what a healthy process it is. Because, she would say that it's like a good cup of coffee. It wakes her out of the illusion that comforts everything, the quick and easy is everything. And it really helps her appreciate her life, but also kind of, I guess it's Psalm 90, right? The Psalm that Moses wrote, the one that we're sure that he wrote. And he says, teach us to number our days so that we may apply ourselves to a heart of wisdom, or so that our hearts may gain wisdom. Why?
They make these calendars where they literally have taken the average life of a person and they've grayed out all of your childhood, and they've grayed out all of your weekends, and they've grayed out maybe if you can get to retirement, these days feels a little and then it just condenses it down and shows you, like, guess what? Here's how many days you have left. Back to that numbering your days piece. And people find it incredibly orienting.
Why?
Well, because think about it like this. The elite special forces of the United States employ similar mental tactics to destroy their recruits. The Green Berets do this. The Navy SEALs do this. The Army Rangers do this. It is load up, get your ruck on, 50 pounds, get your boots on, run. Go.
Oh, this is the
how far?
You don't know when the exercise ends.
Right.
Exercise.
How far?
Yes.
How long? No idea. Go. Should I pace myself? Don't know. There's a cutoff time. So, but how far do you think you got to go before you get cut out? Like, it destroys people because of that mental exercise of, I don't know how long. I don't know how far. I don't know when this suffering, this weight, this just like drudgery ends. And I would go, yeah, there's that breaks people. And that is the same scenario that breaks people in chronic illness, the same scenario that breaks people in terminal diagnoses, the same scenario that breaks people with just a life of heartbreak. You go, how long do I have to keep putting one foot in front of the other? And if you were to sit down with that person and you'd go, hey, I've been able to peer around the corner, I've come back from the future, whatever it is, you have 2 years. You would live differently. That would be the smelling salts to go, oh, 2 years? Oh, or you have 2 days. I have a quote somewhere from the becoming Cousteau. National Geographic
Yeah.
made a film about, and early in the film, it talks about his life where he was kind of heading in one direction, and then he gets into this motorcycle accident on this back country road, and the quote is, "I'm lying there, feeling my life bleed out from me, staring at the stars, and I knew that I was dying, and for me, it changed everything." It's like, why does that moment that so few of us come back from feel so orienting to people? Why does it take that level of, guess what? It is finite. That might be the last conversation you had with that person. And I don't want it to be this sense of fear, anguish, despair.
Nope.
But if you have the orientation, the worldview of, I believe we are eternal beings destined for more time together. However, I am in the room with you right now. And why would I leave unsaid the things that I will regret forever if I had not mentioned them? We talked about this in the podcast with John, Dale, and Jamie on if Christ was coming back, that a couple of months ago now.
Yeah.
And for me, it stirs that piece. I'm like, what are you going to wish you'd said? What are you going to wish you had done? What are you going to wish that you had taken up?
Yes.
Like that orientation.
Yes. You know what I feel this pulling me out of right now? I can feel one of the tonic effects. And it pulls us out of our self-protection. That damnable thing in us that is so committed, just this fundamental commitment to self-protection.
Yes.
And it gets in the way of most of my loving. It gets in the way of most of my risk-taking. It gets in the way of friendship. It gets in the way of laughter. Right?
Right. I mean, this is how I interpret Revelation 12:11. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Like, yes, if I live in the fog and the malaise and the green beret, run. For how far? I'm not going to tell you. When does the suffering end? We don't know. But if you slow down, you're out. That gets lifted with this, oh, no, I am finite. I only have so many years. I have only so many years with my kids as kids. Like I can remember a couple of years ago, I'm sitting in the backyard at summertime, and Susie and I miscarried our first child, and it was brutal. It was horrible. It was holy. We refer to him as pure gift. That was the word we got, because it was like he and his death unlocked some new part of my being. And so I'm sitting in the backyard after we've now had our rainbow baby, which is what they call the child that follows a miscarriage. And I'm watching her as a 2-year-old with just like those chubby little toddler feet step into the grass, like chasing after grasshoppers in our backyard. And I was like, why are my cheeks wet? When did I start weeping? And it was this. It was like, that is a fleeting moment. And I live it more fully. I'm more present to it. I'm a better father when I see it as a passing moment, when I'm not dissociated from the limited nature of it. Like I want to come back to it because it gets me out of my safety. It makes me be the dad that gets off of the steps and puts my phone down and goes and is present with my daughter. And not out of a sense of, again, despair, but out of a sense of just, guess what? Here it is. It is right in front of you.
Yes.
Are you going to enter into it?
Yes.
Will you let yourself feel the joy and the beauty and the pain and live and move towards others? Will you not fear so much death that you live your life? Be another way of phrasing that verse in Revelation.
Yes, that you don't live your life.
Well, like, can you not fear death and
Yes.
therefore live your life?
Yes, got it. Okay. I'm thinking of a funny analogy right now, but I'm connecting the dots of self-protection and the way it numbs us to our own life and therefore the lives of others.
Right.
Our own suffering and therefore the suffering of others. Our own death and therefore the death of others. And there's a beautiful story told. I think he tells it of himself. I think it's in Surprised by Joy, C.S. Lewis's autobiography. And Lewis loved weather, sunshine, rain, fog, wind. And what he decided to do was that whatever the weather was that day, he would go and find the most weathery place of it.
Mm.
Okay, so if it was windy, he'd go to the windiest place. If it was rainy, he'd go to the rainiest place on his walks. He was a walker every day. And there was something about choosing to enter in rather than looking out the window and going, oh, it looks a little foggy. I think I'll stay in. Or, whoa, it looks really rainy. He would put on his slicker and go, no, let's go into the rain. Let's go splash in the puddles. Let's get to the rainiest place we can find today.
I love it.
Yes. And there's something about that. I will choose to enter in versus I will self-protect. Self-protection, man, that thing it's just in the way of love and everything else.
Right. Because to use that example, you don't go outside. You wait. You don't move towards the friend who seems to be lonely and hurting. You wait until it's comfortable.
Yes.
You limit, back to what we talked about last time, you limit your own emotional range because you go, when I experience grief, I fall all the way down that well and I'm never coming back out. Therefore, I don't experience grief. And as a consequence, you don't experience extreme joy. You just begin limiting and hedging and becoming this shell of a person who, when you die, what will be said of you?
Yeah.
What will your friends say?
As we were preparing right here in the studio this morning to record, we pause, we pray, we center, we listen, we align with God and his heart for you all. And it was amazing. Almost loudly, quickly, I heard Jesus say, you have nothing to fear. You have nothing to fear. Some friends got that hard phone call you don't want to get, that someone dear to them got the deadline. The diagnosis was already there, but they got the deadline was you only have months. All treatments now have failed. You have months now. And their response was like, can we come over? That's not my instant response. Like it self-protected me wants to go,
right. No.
Freeze, paralyze.
Don't have what you need.
You're not sure what to say now. But I love that move towards. Another friend of mine, he's teaching his sons true masculinity. And one of the phrases he uses with them, he says, when chaos breaks out, we rush in. I love that.
Yes.
That's beautiful, right? Yeah. When suffering breaks out, we rush in.
Yeah. There's a few anchoring points for me in the Bible, and I've shared most of them in this series, like the story with Lazarus, where you're such a orienting way of seeing God made man able to go and take his time and not skip the process. Another for me is the story in Daniel of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And it's not because of VeggieTales, but thank you very much for that. It's because when I look closely at the moment of their defiance and their faith, it feels really disorienting to me because it's holding two truths that are conflicting, or at least they seem to be at the same time. And they're standing there going, we're not going to worship you, O King. We're not going to bow down. You may cast us to the fiery furnace like that. And this is the line that just feels like it baffles me, and I get pulled to it. And it's this piece of, if you cast us into the flame, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from burning, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O King. But if not, be it known to you that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image you have set up. I look at that and I go, how are you holding both of those things at the same time? How are you holding this deep conviction of, I will be well. He will save me. I will not perish in those flames. And if he doesn't save me from that, I will still be okay. You're like, wait, you just argued with yourself. You just said that you weren't going to have it, but if it happens, it's still something in me goes, oh, that's a posture I want to be able to cultivate, whether it's suffering or death or just life in general. I want to go, I will be okay. I trust that I will be well. I trust that I will have what I need in the situations to move towards others. And if I get there and I don't have the words, or if something happens to me or my family that we aren't getting through unscathed, I still believe I will be well. Like
you can even say that to people. You can say, I don't really know how to be with you right now, but I'm not leaving.
right.
I don't have words for this. Ask them, what do you need?
Mm.
What would be meaningful to you right now? Do you want to talk? Do you want to be quiet? Do you want to break dishes? Do you want to
walk?
Do you want to go get ice cream?
Right.
Ask them. It's okay to admit your discomfort.
Yeah.
And then to say, I'd really like to be present with you. I'm going to choose to stay. What do you need? What would you like? What would be helpful to you?
Yeah.
This is what we're banking on. This is what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were banking on. Isaiah 43, verse 1 and 2. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze, for I am the Lord your God. There's this lovely song by Porter's Gate with Audrey Assad, Nothing to Fear. And sometimes I'll just play this to myself alone in my car, just reminding me this is the overwhelming message of the scriptures, of the heart of God, of the story of Jesus. You are not alone. You will not be forsaken. It will not overwhelm you. You have nothing to fear, which allows us then to enter into the hard in our own life with Christ and enter into the hard in other people's lives.
When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and the depths of the river shall not overwhelm. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. And there is nothing to fear, nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear, nothing to fear, for I am with you.
You have nothing to fear, gang. To love, to enter in, to be present, to come out of self-protection. What else would you like to say as we close?
Yeah. I would hope that my legacy and the legacy of the people that choose to live this way is like cultivating a resilience that can push into suffering, that do not shirk away from the doorway that is coming, and rather journey with others in the process. And again, experience that suffering because it is part of the human emotion, which also lets you experience the joy. We're not looking for you just to get stuck in that place, but to have the full realm and capacity to not feel limited. I have starred here at the end this line that at least I found Dietrich Bonhoeffer said on the day of his hanging in 1945. His last words were, "This is the end. For me, the beginning of life."
This is the end. For me, the beginning of life.
Right.
Yes.
And I just, the grammar makes a big difference in the sentence.
Yes.
And yet it's also like, what a posture to have. This is the end. For me, the beginning of life.
Yes.
Like, what a posture.
Yes.